welcome to Comic Book Junkies. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Joe.
And today we're getting back to the basics. We're going to do another story review. This time, Hellboy Volume 1 by Mike Mignola and John Byrne. And then later, we're going to talk about a little bit of Superman news, the new book that's coming out in July of this year. It's going to be pretty cool, and we'll just kind of get into more of that later. But to start off, Hellboy. We've done a little bit of movies. We're getting back into our review game, and we thought, what's better than doing a Hellboy book? We did Dark Phoenix for Joe when he got his sweet Dark Phoenix Uncanny X-Men 101. I got a big dime press for this year and the other Hellboy first appearances, so we figured, why not do Hellboy? Plus, neither of us have really read too much Hellboy. I'm more familiar with the movie from, 2004 and 2008, the original Ron Perlman, Guillermo del Toro movies. So I really liked those. So yeah, we figured we'd crack into just, review Volume 1 around the start there, since there's a whole kind of scattered history of Hellboy and how he came to be. So we went with the first main storyline. So Joe, it was only about, I think, 4 issues, but it's a pretty tightly packed, pretty, it's got good pacing. It's a good overall story, in my opinion. The art, for me, I love Mike Mignola, top notch, especially like when we read
Cosmic Odyssey.
Yeah, Cosmic Odyssey. Yeah, like seeing him do the DC universe. It felt good to see him do, like his baby doing Hellboy. And I really liked like the little bit of an origin story that they gave him here. I honestly, there's so many places we can start.
I guess I'll start with the first volume. Those 4 chapters are called Seed of Destruction. It was in 1994, and I think Dark Horse was the first to publish it. The very first page, I like that it was dedicated to Jack Kirby, H.P. Lovecraft, his wife, and someone named Elmer Newton. I was actually going to ask you, who is Elmer Newton?
Bro, I have no idea. I liked that page as well for, Kirby and Lovecraft. And then I'm just like, who the hell's Elmer Newton? I had the
Okay, I
same
was hoping
question.
you would know because I
did
like,
zero research into whoever he is. I was just like, okay, that's cool.
No, I'm a big fan of Lovecraft and Kirby though, so I appreciated the shout out to them, and obviously it's in good taste. So chapter 1 starts off with the first page of a journal from a sergeant of the United States. It's dated in 1944 England, and in the journal, the gentleman describes that they were sent there for something they don't quite understand, and were paired with 3 people that belong to the British Paranormal Society. So that includes Professor Malcolm Frost, a guy named Trevor Brutenholm, and Lady Cynthia Jones. So the BPS tells the general that there's a location that they need to attend because they believe something's going on that's so awful that it scares the locals to even talk about it. And the place that they end up going is a place that kind of resembles Easter Island.
Yeah, and they're just kind of hanging out there since they can't exactly pinpoint, where things are going to go. And the one medium, she does say that there is something going on somewhere else as well. And we see that a bunch of Nazis, and a dude who, pretty much is Rasputin, as we find out later, pretty much like an evil wizard, are, doing a ritual, like an evil ritual up in this other area, which kind of looks a little bit kind of like Stonehenge almost. And, they're doing their thing and they're worried about it failing. They're trying to, drive power into the wizard and all that. And nothing happens there. But
it's called the Doomsday Project. The sorcerer dude promises Hitler that there will be some kind of miracle that will reverse the course of war. So he's got his goonies like cranking up the voltage on some weird bullshit, and nothing ends up happening that they can see. But in fact, it's what birthed the creation of Hellboy.
Yeah, dude. So he's pretty much summoned like right out of hell, but instead of showing up next to them, he shows up with the British Paranormal Society and everybody like that. They take a big group photo and they kind of take him in as their own. And, just a big demon boy with a giant like stone fist comes out of nowhere, and they're just like, yeah, it's cool, we'll take him in. And pretty much from there it kind of fast forwards to about the present day, at the time, and he's a grown-ass dude, wears a trench coat, he's got facial hair, he likes stogies, has a gun, everything's cool. He's just a hell man at this point, but he's still known as Hellboy to everybody that sees him.
Yeah, Hellman's an adult. and he goes to visit Broom, one of the members that we were talking about earlier, because Broom is the closest thing he has to a dad. Or when he meets up with Broom, Broom tells a story where he goes out to the Arctic, and when uncovering like Lovecraft like architecture, with there appears to be a man there, and the man appears to be alive, and all of a sudden 10 months of memory loss just occurs to Broom, and he doesn't even know how he got back.
Yeah, and he's just sitting there trying to explain all of that to Hellboy when all of a sudden he starts like tweaking and he starts talking about frogs and shit. Hellboy's kind of like, what? And, Broom runs out of the room and there's a bunch of frogs and all kinds of shit like that. And he comes in, he's almost petrified, almost like a piece of wood almost, with all these marks on his body. And that's when Hellboy sees this giant like frog dude and he just proceeds to fuck him up, dude, with his giant stone fist and his pistol. And it was pretty lit. I like that fight scene there. And I kind of like the way that like Hellboy kind of monologues through it. And he's like, he's like, there's a guy in there or whatever like that. He's like, I'm still going to beat his ass. He's like, I take a lot of heavy hits, but he's like, I got to give him. And he just proceeds to beat the shit out of the frog. But obviously he's distressed that like his pretty much adoptive father just bit the dust right in front of him.
I like that that Hellboy punches the frog and the frog tries to finish the job or whatever, but Hellboy makes sure that he can't, and so he pulls out his pistol while the frog's making its way to the window and shoots the shit out of him afterwards too. So yeah, that frog took a good beating.
Yeah, and from there we kind of see the BPRD as it is today, kind of like the evolution of the BPS, the British Paranormal Society or whatever it was. And they're going to the Cavendish House, which is like this long-standing house, a bunch of generations, I think 9 of them, that know pretty much just tragedy and exploration throughout their whole bloodline. That's who went to the Arctic with Broom, and they're missing. He has pretty much a certain level of like amnesia, short-term memory loss, and they go there. He goes with Liz and Abe Sapien, and those are 2 of the biggest supporting characters for Hellboy, so it was cool to see them appear. Their kind of first appearance and origin story as well. But they go to the Cavendish house where they hear the history of all the generations that's kind of ending now, since the last 3 sons all died without producing offspring. They didn't have any other sons. So finally, this family is kind of going to have an end to its storied history. And that's where we find out that like Rasputin, wizard, evil Nazi dude, whatever you want to call him at this point in time, the woman Emma who's talking to them and, giving this whole pass to Abe, Liz, and Hellboy, he had her lie so that she can have her 2 oldest sons back. But that's not really what it seems. I do also like, before we get going more into the plot, I like where they kind of segue into Abe Sapien's origin and how that's kind of lit, where he's found in like a hospital basement in, was it Washington, D.C., I think? And it had like the date of like Lincoln's death on it, just like on his little like tube where nobody knew he was until they like uncovered it. And so that's how he got his name Abe. So I kind of like that like goofy little way to like name him. I thought that was sweet. It was some real like something of water. What was that movie where the fish man fucks the lady?
Shape of Water.
Yeah, it's real like that.
I like the history of the Cavendish family too. Like you said, it started 9 generations ago. Some guy was convinced that there was like a top of the world, so to speak. And that's why they keep traveling north to go find it. But 9 generations of failure. And how embarrassing.
Mood. But yeah, pretty much that's all that's been going on with that family. So, Broom got in with them somehow. He wanted to go find the Arctic as well because he's always on some like goofy explorations. But they, everybody's kind of just suspicious of like Emma's story. They can kind of see where like the holes are, and they can kind of see that the butler is he looks very familiar. Obviously, he kind of looks like one of the sons, I believe, or one of the family members that they were just speaking on. And they're like, they couldn't actually think that we wouldn't notice that, right? But then it turns out he's just another fucking frog dude. And it turns out that like all the sons are turned into frog dudes, and Emma's dead now. She got her sons back in a sense because they're frog dudes, but yeah, the whole joint's overrun with a bunch of creepy bastards. Abe's kind of underwater. He's trying to figure stuff out. He's running into weirdos. Liz just gets straight up like attacked and like disappears, and then Hellboy's punching more frogs, and it was pretty sweet. And I gotta say, I really like the design of like all the frog creatures. Even like there's like a kind of a simplicity almost in the drawings and kind of even the backgrounds, but like it conveys like the mood of the story, and it's also kind of dynamic for being kind of like a static image. I just really kind of like the way that it kind of panels out into a story, especially like the frog people, like the whole fight with them and just the way that they look, and like just panel to panel how their looks change, their body and their tongues and all the other weird shit that they got going on. I thought that was really cool. But yeah, towards the end of issue 2, creepy Nazi dude wizard, he says kneel before me, and Hellboy says hell nah, starts getting attacked by pretty much a Lovecraftian Cthulhu type tentacle monster.
Yeah, he comes out of the shadows at the very end of the issue, and it's the same Nazi sorcerer that we were introduced to 50 years in the past. And he detains Hellboy pretty quickly and says, if you don't forego your right hand to me for the power, you're going to die. And that's what kind of sends us into chapter 3. Hellboy finds himself in some unique space underneath the house, and the sorcerer mentions that there's like a serpent that craves freedom, but no one has the power to unlock the beast, and he knows that now he has the power to do just that. So Hellboy makes like a last minute kind of shuffle and tries to shoot the sorcerer in the face, but it doesn't really do nothing, oddly enough, and man sticks another frog creature towards Hellboy. So at this point we're like, how much frogs can Hellboy fight?
There's must be a bunch of fluoride in the water at Cavendish Manor, but all the frogs. But anywho, I do also like too that when he's trying to talk to Hellboy into kind of joining him and all that, he says, "I'm not asking you, creature. I command you." And Hellboy says, "Get stuffed," and blasts a cap in his ass, which I thought was sweet. Like that's a cool, very action hero movie thing to do. I mean, I would try and do that too, but I'd probably fuck up the line like delivering it. So whatever, props to him. But half the Cavendishes are frog dudes now, obviously, and they see like the ghost of like Elihu, like the original Cavendish dude, like in the depths. Like Abe runs into him somehow. But we also kind of get the backstory where I'm pretty sure it's like Rasputin, because they even give the actual like, oh, I was poisoned, thrown in a river, but I didn't die, where they kind of give his origin, where they do mention what I just stated, but also that he went to Germany to team with the Nazis for Ragnarok, but he understood that they were all kind of not up to his standards or up to his level to actually team with, aside from 3 of them, and that they were kind of too dumb, but that they had the right moral and sense of consciousness that he has, like towards like what can be done versus what should be done, where too many people would be held back by like their moral sensibilities. So he did like them for that. But even after he summons Hellboy, he does find that the war did turn tides, and that pretty much all the Nazis were on the run or dead. He states that Hitler and like Himmler, all of them were dead. And so he was driven north to the Arctic, where he, ended up connecting with the old creature gods of Agdru Jihad. And he was there until he was pretty much awakened by Broom, because he was just sitting there pretty much in a trance, meditating, trying to connect with the beast, since there's like 7 of them that become one almost, and they all have different names and whatnot that I'm not getting into. But when the Cavendishes and Broom get there, they accidentally awaken him pretty much, and that's why he's back now and pretty much terrorizing everybody. We see that Liz is taken by Rasputin. Sadhu Hem is getting even stronger, and Abe's all tossed up. The whole squad's like, they're really hurting right now. And and pretty much hell is coming to pay now, since they can't really do anything to stop the wizard at this point in time, and he's got the serpent on his side, and everything's going on, and things look pretty bleak for the squad.
Yeah, good thing for Hellboy's amphibian friend, part of the BPRD, because this wizard's going on about his master plan and summoning this serpent, and Hellboy's weak from fighting all these frogs. They keep licking him and making him numb, and Hellboy,
damn, what that mouth do?
Musters up enough strength to like throw a grenade in one of the frog's mouth. But the amphibian dude comes back with his good friend, the original Cavendish guy, and they harpoon the wizard. I don't know why shooting him in the face didn't work, but the harpoon worked for sure. And right right as he's about to summon this big freaking snake, not only does the harpoon go right through this guy's chest, but the woman he abducted, that he used her as like a generator for her power, sets the whole place crumbling to the ground because it's more power than he can handle with the harpoon through his chest. So whole place is crumbling to the ground. BPR&D's safe and making a break for the escape because everything's collapsing, but Hellboy says he'll follow right behind him because he's got some unfinished business. So the wizard's not dead. He just has a harpoon through his chest. He tells Hellboy that he'll never understand his past or true power if he lets him die here. But Hellboy bosses up and says, yeah, no problem. And I'm not worried about it. So he punches him to death. And the Cavendish man stays for the house to crumble. And that's all she wrote.
Yeah, that kind of puts a bow on things. Yeah, I mean, just at the very end there, yeah, he beats the tar out of him and then crushes his skull in his hands. So, I mean, there's no shot he knows where he came from, but at this point, he doesn't care. His adopted father's dead. At this point, it doesn't really matter to him anyways. He's just a dude who's got a giant stone fist and is red. But other than that, at the end, too, it kind of foreshadows into, the ongoing storyline for the rest of the Hellboy books. We see that the Nazis that he ended up the wizard was teaming with, are actually coming back, but that's more of a cliffhanger rather than an actual storyline that we're focused on. But I thought that was cool that they're kind of looping it back in, and who doesn't love seeing a giant, Hellboy beat up Nazis? So I thought that was sweet. So before we get into ratings on this real quick, did you happen to read I don't know if you had the exact same reader that I did. Did yours have the little pieces at the end that had some of his promotional art and first appearance, artwork and stuff like that? Or the little short stories in the previews prior to these stories?
Yeah, where he's like in like a desert setting, and then there's like a dog there who turns
Yeah, and he
into
fights
like an
Anubis.
Egyptian god. Yeah.
You'd like that? It was only like a 4-issue thing or 4-page thing.
Yeah, that was cool. I liked it.
Yeah, that was actually the storyline from San Diego Comic-Con Comics 2, his first actual like full appearance. But in the actual book, it's black and white. So it was cool to read it in color as well. I'd actually just bought that book this year, and when I flipped through it, it's in black and white. And I thought it was cool because it's got like the scarab beetle, the swastika, and the cowboy boot. And he's just like, what a weird sense of symbolism. And then he sees the dog down the road, and dog goes crazy and turns into Anubis, and he's like, it kind of makes sense now. And I thought that was cool. It's just the fact that he's like getting beat up and he gets beat up by the dog and like thrown into a post, and he's like, well, that was an accidental impact. And then he's like, let's see what a few intentional ones do. And he like rocks it, and it just stabs the giant Anubis dog like right in the neck, and he staggers before dying. And I'm just like, that's a cool like little promo for like a 4-page like cameo first appearance thing. Like that would hook me if it was coming out. But yeah, I just wanted to see if you read that too. And then there was like a little other one in like the comics guide where he's fighting the Nazi head in the jar and the giant gorilla. I thought that was sweet too. Like it's just
doesn't he
like,
throw the head into the gorilla's mouth?
Yeah, some shit like that. It was goofy. I thought it was sweet. Like the gorilla was trying to inject the girl with like a syringe and shit. I was just like, sweet. Like I just like those like kind of like zany abstract ideas. I didn't know that I needed Hellboy to fight like a Nazi head and a gorilla with like Frankenstein bolts in his neck. That was sweet. But besides that, let's just go back to our review here. And what are you going to rate this book? It was, only about 4 issues, but what'd you think?
I'd give that 4 issues an 8.5 out of 10. So, like you said before we started talking about what we read, I didn't really know much about Hellboy other than Ron Perlman. And so it was very cool to actually do a deep dive into the character, especially a cool origin story like this. And I didn't realize how Lovecraftian things are, if that's a word, as far as like his history goes and what he means for comics. I think they did a very good job explaining Hellboy without doing it in like one big cheesy flashback. They like sprinkle tidbits about what he knows and what he's going to learn about himself, what he doesn't know about himself. So I thought it was cool that we kind of discover things the same time that he does in the comics. So they do a very good job of that. Art was fantastic. The writing was really good. I don't know why. I can't tell you why, but it reminded me a lot of that Shazam story that we read. It was kind of such a modern approach to comics that was so revolutionary, but I really liked it. I'd give it an 8.5 out of 10, would be my final score for it. It wasn't perfect, but it was a very good read for 4 issues. I'd recommend anybody who's not familiar with the character to read it because it changed my perspective of Hellboy, and I would definitely be interested in reading ongoings if they came out with something moving forward, or even collecting his first appearance because it was way more up my alley than I thought it was. I like the genre that they're trying to create with this character. It was almost like an Image comic without being too indie. You know what I mean? It was like a Marvel DC comic, but indie. So I enjoyed it.
I agree completely. I'm actually right there with you at 8.5 out of 10. So yeah, I think at like a craft level, the Mike Mignola is a genius when he came up with this character. I mean, it started out as just some like quick drawings, and he didn't even give much thought into the name. He just drew like a gargoyle looking dude for I think Salt Lake City Comic Con back in the day, and then he just wrote Hellboy on his like belt buckle, and he's like, "Haha, Hellboy." And then he ended up working on it through Dime Press 4, and he kept working and working on it. And I think that putting in the amount of time and effort he did into this character really paid off, and just the way he went with it too. There's so many times that we see a good like as far as origins, or like we see a good concept a lot of times in comics, but I don't see execution all the time. And I like that he has his very own distinct flavor, his own voice for Hellboy the character, and that in his whole universe. It's all very unique while still kind of touching on somewhat of the tropes of like the silver and golden age of comics in a way, but he updates them and presents them in a modern way, like you said. So this story itself, I like the fact too that this is a book coming out in the 90s, and it's still revolved around world wars and Nazis and experimentation and the occult and all this. I like that you were able to do something that was so far away. Like we know that like Captain America and Namor the Submariner and Shazam and all them all have their like golden age Nazi origins, but this is a 90s character, and they did it well with probably better tact and care than honestly the characters in the 40s did, obviously. But that giant overview aside, the story itself, the craft was great. Mike Mignola's art, top notch. I've become a big fan. I like his drawings of Swamp Thing specifically too. Hellboy, obviously Cosmic Odyssey, all that stuff, killer. John Byrne helps script the whole story. John Byrne does a great job with that too. It was very compact, cohesive, and dynamic. Like there's no lulls, there's no boring parts of this story. They don't add too much fluff, but they don't leave anything out. I just thought that for it being literally 4 issues, it was a great story. I've read a lot of issues or a lot of storylines that are 6, 8, 12 that don't have as much, emotion or cleverness or wit to them. And this one was just like, it was done very tastefully. I'll just say that. So, I mean, from a craft standpoint, it's fantastic. If you like comics, I would recommend it, obviously. If you want something that's not, superhero-y, but, something that's not quite like a crime book or something, just a straight paranormal book, this is like a perfect mix of all three. And I mean, like you said, I like Lovecraft, I like Kirby, and you can see and feel the influences while you're flipping through this book, whether it's the layouts, the actual drawings of the characters, and the inspiration for them. So I thought it was great overall. 8.5 easy, and I'd definitely be down to like revisit Hellboy in the future and do another volume or something like that, because I really enjoyed this. And if I've seen memes and I'm familiar with some of the other Hellboy stories, loosely. I haven't had time to read everything, but there's a lot of good shit, and a lot of it gets honestly even funnier as it goes on. So yeah, this book was killer. But with that being said, that's our book review for Hellboy. You want to get into the Superman news?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So you may have already heard at this point in time, but we don't care. We thought it was interesting, thought it was cool. And, the wasteland that is the current comic market for us. I mean, maybe you guys are out there enjoying everything that comes out. More power to you. I can't do it. I literally went and picked up my poll a week ago, and I had 2 books in it. So that just tells you where I'm at. But Superman. So we all know that we love Superman. We really loved Tomasi and Gleason's Superman run at the beginning of Rebirth. We love Superman, dating all the way back to the late 30s. We're Superman guys through and through. Joe more so than me, that's admitted. But in recent past, since Tomasi and Gleason stopped, there's been the Bendis era, which he and I fell off Superman because Bendis writes every character with the exact same voice. He doesn't have to co-sign that, but I think so. And it just made it boring and stale for me because why would you give creative power to one guy across two books and the whole voice for the character? That kind of ruffled my feathers. And then, we're into Future State. Well, whatever the hell you want to call it now. DC Infinite Frontier, whatever. It's just a little brand logo. Philip Kennedy Johnson, I believe, was supposed to be taking over Superman and Action Comics. Now, maybe I don't pay enough attention to authors nowadays, but I didn't really know who he was. I guess he does okay work. I don't know, whatever. Some people like him. I don't know him. But I thought they were making the same mistake, giving the same guy the complete direction for the whole character. But turns out Superman is ending. So it looks like in July, we're getting a rebooted Superman series. It'll be called Superman, Son of Kal-El. And it's going to be Jonathan Kent taking over as the primary Superman, at least in that book. Action should still be, typical Clark. But I'm honestly kind of pumped to see what they're going to do with Jonathan because I liked him as, like a boy, like a young boy, him and Robin, hanging out the Super Sons. But since Bendis had to age him up anyways, there's really no going back at this point. So why don't we put him in as Superman? They've kind of given him more and more responsibility. He's been with the Legion now. I'm pumped to see where he's at. I mean, he's a half human, half Kryptonian hybrid. And I mean, for the most part, the character's had a good voice for him and he's had a lot of potential. And I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, the character resembles a lot of what his dad resembles. So they got that wholesome farmer vibe going, but something for the newer generation. And so I feel like there's a lot of good stories that have yet to be told with some of these characters, but I prefer them making new characters versus like completely going one weird direction or another with somebody that already exists. And so I think it's kind of fun. I think that, it'll almost be like Smallville in the sense that he's not Superman yet, or not like a leader or like a figure of like leadership. And so you would expect Jon to make a lot of mistakes with his new superpowers, especially because he's half human. But the difference between him and Clark is that, he knows exactly who his parents are. He's got them in the household the whole time. And so he has better direction and better mentorship. So I am excited to see how they flesh out that character. And I think it's a character that could stand the test of time. So as far as Superboy goes, it worked, but I see a lot more potential with Jonathan Kent. And so I guess my last shout out there is I'm sure prices are already climbing, so you don't want to buy things when they're hot. But he first appeared in Convergence Superman issue 2, which is a modern book. As things get older, they appreciate. So even if it's a little expensive now, I'm considering buying a copy myself, just because the newer it is, the cleaner it will probably be. So it'll already be in good condition and it'll be something to hold on to if the character takes off. So I'm excited to see what comes along with it. And I guess, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I want to get my hands on that book as well. And I do agree with pretty much what you said. I do think there's a lot of potential there. I do agree that, we don't always need to do like a new character with a certain mantle and all that, but it makes more sense when DC is kind of like the home of legacy characters. I mean, we've seen how many Green Lanterns and, how the Bat family is gigantic and the Flash and all them. Everybody loves having a new generation, Flash character, Batman, whatever. So I think it makes sense for Superman. I mean, there's already been like a few Superboys at this point too, but for me at least, it's always stuck more with Jonathan for some reason, just because it felt more natural to me instead of him just being like a Superman clone or something like that. It's like literally it is just that wholesome farm shit, which is what I like. I mean, I'm the Shazam guy. I like the wholesome goofiness, and that's kind of what Jon brings to the Superman family and that whole kind of universe. I really like their interactions in the Tomasi and Gleason run too. So maybe that just is kind of where I'm stuck thinking. But that, and it's just like also just the fact that I'm not really reading much out of DC. I mentioned it before. I'm probably going to pick up the Robin solo series because it actually looks pretty interesting. But I think that this is going to be like my second DC title since I don't see much else piquing my interest nowadays.
It would be sick if Tomasi came in and wrote it too.
Oh, that'd be sweet. But I'm pretty sure it's going to be Tom Taylor, which he's big off of like Deceased and Injustice and stuff like that. And admittedly, I don't read the most Tom Taylor stuff, but I do kind of look to him in a sense, at least compared to more of the writers out there nowadays, as kind of like a consistent quality option. So just based off of what I've seen in Injustice and stuff like that, he understands the voice of the characters. And granted, this character has a younger voice, but like I feel like he understands where to like guide him moving forward. Whether he executes or not, don't know. But I have faith, as opposed to some other, regular kind of like DC house writers that are just kind of like there at the time. I mean, I usually don't like cover swipes and stuff like that, but I did see an issue 1 cover that's an exact swipe of the Superman one from his original volume 1 back in the 30s, 40s. And I thought that was a cool little touch too. It's cool that Jon gets that same cover that his dad got. So I think that that'll be cool. And if that's the A cover, I'll be getting it.
Kind of like passing on the torch. And I'm excited to be reading more, honestly, because we do reading for this, obviously. But right now, there's only 2 books on my pull, and that's Immortal Hulk and X-Men. And
Ditto.
Immortal Hulk's supposed to be ending soon. So I'll be adding Superman. I'll be adding Robin, like you mentioned, and then I'll be adding Wonder Girl as well. So it'll be nice to add a few books back into the cycle, because right now it's like every time I go to pick up my pull, it's bare bones. So
yeah, dude, it's real boom bust lately. I know that
so I'll be adding 3 DC titles here shortly.
Exactly. And the market's real cyclical. I mean, it's always like this. There's always a good period where there's a bunch of cool shit coming out, or at least good ideas that are good for like maybe an arc, and then they trail off, and then I have to unfortunately drop it. But I'm hoping we're coming back on an upswing soon with Infinite Frontier, hopefully reintroducing more, old school characters and stuff like that.
I think it's funny the 3 titles we're picking up is just like a branch of the Trinity.
Yeah, I didn't really think about it like that, but it's where the books are more interesting. I mean, where they're putting the creative teams now for, the main Trinity, it's like they're running in place. It's like they're going to school and they're okay taking a test and getting a C on it instead of trying and getting an A, where it seems like the people that they're putting, or at least the premises they're pitching for like this Robin, Wonder Girl, Superman series, it's all like they're trying, like they're doing their homework. They're like, yeah, we really need to like hit this out of the park. But this is all through my eyes. They may actually be total dog shit. I don't know. You always run the risk, dude. It's a flip of a coin nowadays. But I have hopes.
Same. Well, that's all I have, other than the fact that the comic market's pretty crazy, where, if you would have picked up a Jonathan Kent last year, it probably would have been $10. Now it's probably like 100 for all I know.
Yeah, I haven't been paying any attention, but yeah, everything's so nuts. But maybe we'll save that for like our investor collector special episode one day down the line, where we can really analyze what the hell's going on, because shit's just going in every which direction right now, and I can't even wrap my lizard brain around it at the moment.
All right.
But all that being said, we appreciate you guys listening and sticking with us. If you'd like, please tell a friend, spread the word, post it on a comic book group on Facebook, tell a friend directly, your postman, don't care. Give us a review, 5 stars on Apple, wherever you rate your podcasts. We're officially everywhere. I've been saying we're everywhere. Thanks, Pandora, for getting back to us. So we are everywhere. And yeah, and make sure you just find us on Instagram, CBJ Pod. React to our stories, comment, slide in our DMs. We don't care. We want to shoot the shit. We want to know what you like, what you don't like, what you want us to do, what you want us to stop doing. Pretty open to whatever. And yeah, we've got a lot coming up ahead. We're not slowing down anytime soon. I know you want to hit them with what we're doing next week.
I think we should do Identity Crisis, an event by DC, kind of follow up with all the other event stuff that we've done.
I co-sign on that. I think it's going to be very interesting. It should be a good one. I love big DC stories, they kind of touch the whole universe. So I think that's going to be pretty lit. But yeah, other than that, get at us. Like I said, CBJ Pod on Instagram, CBJ Podcast on Facebook, Comic Book Junkies. We're on YouTube. You could type it in pretty much wherever now. We should pop up. If we don't, I don't know. What's your problem? You
probably have dial-up.
Yeah, what's wrong? Oh, that's your AOL internet. But time to you know what? We appreciate you guys, and we're gonna catch you next week.
All right, guys.
Later.